So again, welcome everyone to the Sunday feast, love feast, established by Srila Prabhupada. We'll be hearing from Srimad Bhagavatam, some from Chaitanya Charitamrita also, but as usual we'll have some invocation for auspiciousness. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirajat Nastra Prayashu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavat Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. There's an interesting little fact about this last shloka we chanted. Initially, it did not read by regular attendance in classes. It read by like attending the Bhagavatam class. And Srila Prabhupada had devotees change it to what he actually intended, and that is by regular attendance. So there's a difference between casually coming once or twice a year and coming all the time to get the mercy. Anyway, these verses are quite often chanted before even beginning Srimad Bhagavatam. So today's topic deals with this subject matter, which we will be going through systematically. Just a second. Open this up. The topic of Sambandha Abhideya Prayojana. What is that actually? What are we talking about? Sambandha. It's a type of jnana, knowledge. All three categories are knowledge. A specific type of knowledge. But anyway, the subject today, which really is just going to be kind of an outline, because you can't cover all of this in one lecture, one class. But reawakening our loving service for Radha and Krishna in the eternal rasa of seva in Golok Vrindavan. So the eternal mellow, the eternal mood, the eternal way that it has to be. And seva, everyone knows seva means what? Service. So we have some eternal relationship with Krishna. Our object is to get to Golok Vrindavan. Actually, being here in this temple, we're already at Golok Vrindavan, but we won't veer off into that direction right now. But that is the object when studying this. Mama Ratna Vinigbhavam Ratnanya Parichinvata Hasantu Santo Jiremi Naswaswanta Vinoda Krit. This is a verse composed by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti. The saintly devotees may laugh at me for becoming a jewel merchant, though I know nothing about precious jewels. But I feel no shame, for at least I may entertain them. Namesti Vaisadusyapi Napir Bhaktir Virakti Raktir Natatapi Lalyat Sudurgamad Eva Bhavami Veda Stutyartha Chantamani Rasi Gridnu. Though I have no wisdom, no devotion, or detachment, I'm still greedy to take the philosopher's stone of the Vedas, the Vedic prayers, from the fortress in which it is being kept. So interestingly enough, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti, often quoted by Srila Prabhupada, but he composed these two verses. Actually, there are more. I think there was 6 or 7. Anyway, these two verses he composed before he began writing an extensive commentary on Srimad Bhagavatam. So certainly I have to try to take up the mood because I have no qualifications at all. 0, zilch. We're talking 0 people, nothing. But I'm relying strictly on the Guru Parampara, so that when you hear, then you're hearing from the Acharyas, not me. This prayer, even though it's an invocation, the history behind this Tattva Sandarbha, which we're going to rely on for this presentation, we'll take some information from this. But the Tattva Sandarbha was written by Srila Jiva Goswami. And the reason he wrote it is because, number one, he was ordered by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, along with the other Goswamis of Vrindavan, to actually revive and publicize information about the Vedas, particularly Srimad Bhagavatam. And so he took this mission to heart, and he compiled this book. Number one, this whole book, Tattva Sandarbha, is aimed at how is a person going to know the truth? How do you know the truth? Tattva means truth. So he composed this entire book to explore the real avenues of how any individual can get the absolute truth. Because I can tell you something, he can tell you something, she can tell you something else, and like this we go around the room and we got, 40, 50 opinions about what is what. But Tattva Sandarbha is aiming to put all of this to rest so we know specifically how to get the absolute truth. So I was saying the interesting thing about this, rather than write his own verse, as most gurus and acharyas did when they introduced the book, when they introduced the work, he chose specifically a verse already written in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And it's a crucial verse. So we'll chant this together. Krishna varam tvisha krishnam
Krishna varanam tvisha krishnam
Sangopangastra prashadam
Sangopangastra prashadam
Yagnai Sankirtana Prayar
Yagnai Sankirtana Prayar
Yajanti hi Sumedasa
Yajanti Sumedasa.
In the age of Kali, intelligent persons perform congregational chanting to worship the incarnation of Godhead, who constantly sings the names of Krishna. Although his complexion is not blackish, he is Krishna himself. He's accompanied by his associates, servants, weapons, and confidential companions. So, if you get a copy of this book, which I highly recommend you do, you'll see why he chose this particular verse. But just keep that in mind, that here he's just introducing what this book is all about. So we will continue with our theme for today. Ontology and epistemology. So don't don't go running out the door when you hear a word like this. It's just a word in the dictionary. What we're concerned with is what does it actually mean and how are we going to use it? So ontology is concerned with what is true, what is real. And questions you'll hear when you're studying ontology. What is existence? Or what is the nature of existence? People have that question in mind, even if they don't phrase it exactly. But most all human beings at some point are curious. And epistemology is dealing with the nature of knowledge and different methods for gaining that knowledge. And you'll hear such questions as, what do you know? And how do you know it? Can you prove it? You can tell me anything. You can tell me, like Garima can tell me, I have a nice purple dress on, but I don't believe you. How can you prove it?
I'm wearing it.
How can you prove it?
I'm wearing it.
I don't think it's purple. I think it's pink. How do you prove it? So this is what we're going to be getting at, because somebody can tell you anything, and you can actually also reject what is the truth. If you're an idiot like me, I rejected it, and we still missed the point. So we want to find out, what is this epistemology and ontology all about? Just a little further definition. Ontology refers to a set of phenomena that are said to exist or be known by a type of theory. Of course, what Srila Prabhupada said by the very word theory means I don't know. So I have a theory about something, but you really don't know. Epistemology. In philosophy of science, epistemology means the theory of knowledge. How do we know what we know? What constitutes valid knowledge and how to obtain it? That particularly is what Srila Jiva Goswami is very much concerned with. What constitutes valid knowledge and how do you get it? And methodology just focuses on a specific way in which knowledge is constructed. So those are some technical terms, but just to make you familiar with that. Now we turn to the lion guru in our disciplic succession, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. He actually wrote a whole discourse on this subject. I just called out a couple important parts where he explains what are we talking about when you get into ontology. What does it actually mean from the Vedic point of view? Though the Vedanta deals with ordinary language, quite dovetailing the views of ordinary intelligentsia to gradually heave them up to the supersensuous regions where senses cannot work by their present implements or cannot help them by the words of their credulous friends. Still, the transcendental topics are imparted slowly through the linguistic and rationalistic attainments to differentiate the plane of transcendence and the undesirable transformable plane of enjoyments. We happen to live daily on that latter part. The material plane is what he's discussing. And when you're on the material plane, you're using your senses in a material way. What senses are we talking about? Everybody knows. Hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, seeing. Those 5 senses we have. So if we use them in the ordinary day-to-day processes like we are accustomed, then forget it. They're not going to give you anything transcendental. But keep in mind what he said in the beginning here. Though the Vedanta deals with through ordinary language, quite dovetailing the views of ordinary intelligentsia, gradually to heave them up. So all we have is material. You can't change the way you talk. I mean, you might try to fake another accent or do another dialect, but you can't change it. It's still material. So what is Srila Bhaktisiddhanta saying? We have to dovetail that ability, using it to hear something transcendental, something that comes from beyond our purview. That is the secret. As if it is helping the journey of understanding, we need not stick to a stagnant view in order to gratify our senses at the cost of rationality and harmonious language, exactly fitting our whims. So, the method of studying this particular philosophy should never be confined to the same process of confusing the transcendence with our present plane of thought. To say it's something a little bit different, don't think Srimad Bhagavatam is an ordinary book. When you pick up your Bhagavad Gita and read it at home, don't think, oh, I'm reading Bhagavad Gita, another book I got. It's not. This is the process Srila Bhaktisiddhanta is talking about. Otherwise, even if you have that book and you approach it totally material senses, then you'll miss the essence. Another paragraph where he breaks this down a little bit further. The Vedanta deals with a theme beyond the finite views of phenomena. The subjects dealt with in that particular philosophy are not confined to any part of the material space, any definite span of time, or any object of sensuous perception made up of any substance of this universe. So this is the Vedanta. It's always in existence. It always will be in existence. It always has been in existence. It's not that 5,000 years ago, Dvaipayana Vedavyasa got some paper and started writing. That's not how it happened. He was simply inspired by his guru to once again present this in the Kali Yuga. Just like Krishna himself once again presented Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna. Because over time in this material world, things get misplaced. Like last week, reflecting on myself, I was looking all over for my japa beads. I went to the car, I looked in the living room, dining room, I looked everywhere because I had just come in. I knew I should have my japa beads, and I couldn't find them. I retraced my steps again, went back to the car, didn't see it. Shows you this material mind. And then finally, the third time I went back to the car, I opened the armrest. And there's where I put my japa beads. That's the nature of the material world, the material mind. If you're not focused, so I wasn't really focused on finishing my rounds at that point. I knew I had to put it away and save it. Boom, it's in there. Nobody can see it. And then when I get home, you don't even remember. That's a material quality. We want to get rid of all of that kind of thing. The activities of a being are measured in time. The playground of a being, either linear, superficial, or cubical, is accommodated in space and limited subjectively, or fleshy tabernacle, or is accommodated in space and limited subjectively, or fleshy tabernacle entity is confined to phenomena. The body, that's what we're talking about. The words might sound a little different because Bhaktisiddhanta was a master of the Queen's English. So back in 1930s, the type of writing, the type of expressions that were available then are a bit different now. And certainly no one had come to the West to pick up that particular lingo that is popular nowadays. So anyway, some of these words, don't be thrown off by them. The Vedantic scheme is quite different from such limited structural monuments. Though some people attempt to bring Vedanta within the prison bars of their senses. Another poetical expression. You can't materially use your senses, your intelligence, to try to decipher Srimad Bhagavatam or Bhagavad Gita. You have to hear from the realized Acharya. So we're fortunate to hear this from Srila Prabhupada, that he took time to translate this entire work for our benefit. This shloka is from Bhagavad Gita. With what we've just said in the background, we can now begin to put some emphasis on what we're hearing. This is not something ordinary. You're actually hearing from the Supreme Person himself. We're so accustomed to hearing from John and Susie on our iPhone or whatever phone, so we can rely on that. John just told me they're going to be giving away $500 bills tomorrow morning in Walmarts. I'm going. So we rely on that. We don't approach Bhagavad Gita in that way. We should approach it minimum with awe and reverence, but with the utmost respect. So here Krishna is saying, Daivihi esha guna mayi mama maya duratyaya mama eva ye prapadyante mayam etam taranti te.
Daivihi esha guna mayi mama maya duratyaya mama eva ye prapadyante mayam etam taranti te.
Daivihi esha guna mayi mama maya duratyaya Mam eva ye prapadyante mayam etam taranti te.
Daivihi guna mayi mama maya duratyaya mam eva ye prapadyante mayam etam taranti te.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada. This divine energy of mind, consisting of the three modes of material nature, is difficult to overcome. But those who have surrendered unto me can easily cross beyond it. A part of the purport here, Srila Prabhupada says, no one can trace out the history of his becoming conditioned at a certain date in material history. So no, we don't know when we came here. This is not our first birth, we can guarantee that much. We've been here for a while. Even though the tendency, when you reach the human platform and you're doing so many nice, wonderful things, you just think, I was born, I'm a genius, I'm the wealthiest, the most handsome, the prettiest, and I got it made, and this is what I'm doing. And of course, very little thought to, well, what's next after this? But no one can trace out the history of his becoming conditioned at a certain date in material history. Consequently, his release from the clutches of material nature is very difficult. Even though that material nature is an inferior energy, because material energy is ultimately conducted by the supreme will, which the living entity cannot overcome. So even the inferior energy of Krishna we cannot master. This is basically what we spend 99% of our time trying to do, is to master the material energy. We have so many plans, so many thoughts, and some of them come about and obviously some don't. But the reason behind this is because we're in the material world. And Krishna himself explaining to Arjuna and everyone, it's very difficult to get out of the three modes of material nature. Very difficult. You can't do it on your own. This is the second verse in Srimad Bhagavatam. Dharma prahojita kataivotra paramo nirmatsaranam satam Vedyam Vastavam Atra Vastu Shivadam Tapatrayo Mulanam Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Kritakim Vaparar Ishvara Sadyo Ridya Varudate Ridayate Strakritibi Shushubish Tatnat. Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated, this Bhagavat Purana propounds the highest truth, which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart. The highest truth is reality, distinguished from illusion, for the welfare of all. Such truth uproots the threefold miseries. This beautiful Bhagavatam, compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in his maturity, is sufficient in itself for God realization. What is the need of any other scripture? As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam, by this culture of knowledge, the Supreme Lord is established within his heart. This one verse could be the topic of many classes, what to speak of just now. But what we're getting at then is this transcendental vibration that is Srimad Bhagavatam. Remember, our premise here was to find out something about some knowledge about our relationship with Krishna, and then from that knowledge to go ahead and implement it. Because if we don't implement it, it's like if I have the plans to build a 2-story building with all the internal things there and all laid out, but I never even dig the foundation. What use is the plans? They're just going to sit there. So we have to implement that knowledge. Just a little bit from the purport. One becomes qualified to hear Srimad Bhagavatam after many pious deeds. The intelligent person with thoughtful discretion can be assured by the great sage Vyasadeva that he can realize the Supreme Personality directly by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. Major statement, people, by Srila Prabhupada. By hearing this Srimad Bhagavatam, you can actually directly understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So it means we have to take Srimad Bhagavatam very, as Parampara says, with great reverence. We have to treat it very special. Even if it's at home, at least dust it once a month. Dust it. I didn't say you had to read it yet. Just dust it off once a month. It's funny, but even that is showing reverence. Because Srila Prabhupada said, even if you just keep Srimad Bhagavatam in your home, you can't measure what you receive from that. But back to our point. What we're learning then, through the mercy of Jiva Goswami, is why the Vedanta is so important. And this gets into understanding something about Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojana. From the Srimad Bhagavatam again, this shloka, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explained to Sanatana Goswami that there are 3 purposes in the Vedas. One is to understand our relationship with Krishna. That's Sambandha, as we've mentioned. Another is to act according to that relationship, Abhideya. And the third is to reach the ultimate goal, which is Prayojana. The word Prayojana means necessities. And the ultimate necessity is explained by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Prema Pumarto Mahan. The greatest necessity for a human being is the achievement of love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So So he didn't say the greatest achievement is when you can drive to the temple in your Rolls Royce. Is that the greatest achievement? When you can roll out your 6 diplomas, a doctorate in philosophy, a doctorate in this, a doctor of this, whatever. No, doesn't impress. Krishna has all the doctorates, more than we can name. You want to compare with Krishna's. So it's very simple that we should love Krishna. I'm sure Parambara can back me up on this. When devotees met here many years ago when Srila Prabhupada came, there were many prominent Sankirtaniyas, book distributors, and many prominent devotees. And the question came up in the discussion, Srila Prabhupada, what pleases you the most? And everyone thought he was going to say, distributing my books, getting this knowledge out there. He didn't say that at all. He said very succinctly that you love Krishna. Bas, end of the story. So we have a big job in front of ourselves. That is, we have to learn again how actually to love Krishna, because we've completely forgotten. It's not that we didn't know. We, at some point, were on a whole different level than we are now. We were actually on the spiritual plane. But for whatever reason, and remember in the beginning, Srila Prabhupada said, you can't trace out where your conditioning began. You can try. What was I 2 births ago? What was I 100 births ago? Is this my first birth? How are you going to trace this out? You can't. And so the suggestion there was actually in the background, forget trying to chase this unnecessary thing. Learn to love Krishna. So in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, we have this nice shloka. Sambandha avideya prayojananam etina artha sarva sutre paya vasan. One's relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, activities in terms of that relationship, and the ultimate goal of life, to develop love of God. These 3 subjects are explained in every aphorism of the Vedanta Sutra. From the form, the culmination, for they form the culmination of the entire Vedanta philosophy. So we should take it from Lord Chaitanya that he knows what he's speaking of. Everything about the Vedas, in actuality, is leading one to Krishna. Because in this material world, we've forgotten Krishna. It doesn't matter what particular universe we're in, what particular planet. We've just forgotten in the material world. Yesterday, we read that there are 400,000 shlokas in the current Puranas that's on this planet. 400,000 Puranas. 400,000 verses in the Puranas. 400,000. There's 18,000 verses in Srimad Bhagavatam. But in the Puranas, this information also I picked up from Srila Jiva Goswami. In the Puranas, there's 400,000 shlokas. But then to show why and how we got that current set of knowledge, he simply mentioned that that's all that we can handle in this day and age. In Brahmaloka, the Puranas there have 1 billion shlokas. So we can't even learn 3 or 4 here. At least it's so hard to memorize anything in the Kali Yuga. But Lord Brahma and those beings in that realm have access to the 1 billion shlokas in the Puranas. But all of them are simply referring us to Krishna. So we're lucky Srila Prabhupada summarized this and gave us access further in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Asirareva sarvatrita siddhyat yesham abhipasita saddharmasya vabodhaya yesham nirbandini mati. Those who are eager to awaken their spiritual consciousness and who thus have unflinching, undeviated intelligence certainly attain the desired goal of life very soon. So is anyone here eager to awaken their actual dormant Krishna consciousness? I don't see any hands. Any hands up there? Hari Bol! We have to become eager. And once a devotee in a class I happened to attend with my Guru Maharaj right here, and Guru Maharaj, what if I don't have that enthusiasm to be desiring this? Then Gurudev said, then just pray for the desire, to get that desire. And then he took it a step further. If you don't have that desire, pray for the desire, to get the desire, to get the desire to chant Hare Krishna. Hari Bol! So that's how we develop that enthusiasm. We might not have it. I don't have it. Can't even remember where I put my Java beads, but somehow we have to develop that enthusiasm. Jivera Swarupa Hoya Krishnera Nityadas Krishnera Tatasta Shakti Veda Veda Prakash Suryam Sakirana Yaiche Agni Jwala Chaya Swabhavika Krishnera Tina Prakara Sati Haya. It is the living entity's constitutional position to be an eternal servant of Krishna, because he is the marginal energy of Krishna, and a manifestation simultaneously one with and different from the Lord, like a molecular particle of sunshine or fire. Krishna has 3 varieties of energy. Important 2 shlokas there. We should remember this. What is our real position? Again, this is Lord Chaitanya was instructing here himself. Jivera Swarupa Hoya. So our real position, constitutional, it's inherent. It's a constitutional position. Inherent means it's in your nature, your real nature. Not the material nature. Material nature can have so many things. But our real nature is what? To be an eternal servant of Krishna. Why? Who can say why? It's right there on the board. Who can read why? Our eternal position is to be a servant of Krishna because who can read? What does it say?
He is the marginal energy.
We're part of Krishna. Hello. Are you with me, people? Yes. Well, are you with me? Yes. Should have been Hari Bol. Hari Bol. Okay, I'm going to do it a little later on. We're going to try that again, and we'll see what happens. But I'm being humorous, trying to be humorous, just so that we remember some of these things, because humor also can invoke memory. Of course, ultimately, don't think it's something material for that, because memory comes from Krishna too. Sarva chaham, what is that sloka? Sarvasya chaham ridi suni vishto mata smritir jnana apohana. So he's giving everything. Smriti, the ability to remember. Jnana, knowledge, he's giving. And then something we don't talk about too often. Apohana, what is that? The ability to forget. We're thinking, I forgot something. Just like this idiot said, I forgot where my beads were. I didn't forget, really. I don't have that ability to make myself forget where you put your japas. I don't have that ability. How can I? Can't, because right now I know where they are. Da-da-da. See, I didn't forget. But why? Sarvasya Chaham. Krishna is there. The Goaparaj is in your briefcase. Don't embarrass yourself again. Here they are. So everything comes from Krishna. And we have to remember that, and then we won't strive in the wrong direction. Krishna is giving us this opportunity through divine transcendental sound. That's what Srila Prabhupada brought to the Western world. It's not like he brought some books, like we go to the library and we take out some books and we read. Or we go to school and we get some books and we study. It's all on a material plane. Srila Prabhupada brought Krishna in his heart, and in his trunk he happened to have special permission. He brought Krishna, and he so nicely gave us the opportunity. So we're getting to the conclusion of what we're discussing here, which again was really 90% based on what Srila Jiva Goswami has given us from the Tattva Sandarbha. This is kind of like a recap, but it's also a little bit new information. If you read the Sarva Samvadini, and that simply means when he finished the Tattva Sandarbha, he gave additional explanation at the end of that first book to explain a few things he had been talking about. So one of those things he mentioned in the very beginning, first chapter, was that we have to rely on transcendental sound vibration. But anyway, to recap here, the Tatra Purushasya states that although 10 means of acquiring valid knowledge are known, there's 10 ways that we get to know anything. Sensory perception, that's our 5 senses. Logic, verbal testimony, the opinion of sages, analogy, hypothetical inference, absence, inclusion, tradition, and gesture. So if we would analyze all of those, we would, they're not difficult to understand. But this is how we get to know something. But Srila Jiva Goswami gets to the point when he says the fundamental means of knowing is but one. You can kick all the rest out. They're not reliable. Why aren't they reliable? Who knows the 4 defects of a human being anywhere and in any society? 4 defects of a human being. So those 4 defects, imperfect senses, illusion, tendency to cheat, and what was the... Okay. Well, I'm just going to read it then so we can summarize this succinctly, like Srila Jiva Goswami intended. This one means consists of statements free from the flaws of, and those are the 4 things: inattention, false perception, the tendency to deceive, and inadequate power of the senses. Because the other 9 means are mostly flawed by false perception and so on, they tend to give knowledge contrary to the fact. And so people are uncertain whether these are proper means or only shadow means of understanding. Because the one means is free from those weaknesses, the other 9 depend on it for becoming firmly rooted, just as the subjects of a king depend on him for their sustenance. Other reasons for the superiority of flawless verbal testimony, are that it does not depend on any of the others. That although the others may assist it as far as they're able, this one independent means of knowing in performing its function is even seen to overrule the others. That a fact established by the one means is irreversible by the others. And finally, that it is most effective in proving facts that the power of the other means cannot even touch. So a quick example comes to my mind from Chaitanya Charitamrita, where we all know that the stool of an animal is totally contaminated, and one should not go near it. But yet, it is said in the Shastra that the stool of a cow is pure. Of course, people in certain areas know this, and they're not unafraid of this. But just to show that point, that in recent era, so-called modern science came to that conclusion by putting cow dung under a microscope and discovering that no type of bacteria would grow there. No type of bacteria grows in cow dung because it's a pure substance. So we can't rely on anybody else's giving us knowledge, or even knowledge from material books or material scientists, because ultimately it can be proven wrong. That just like this example. However, if we have read in the Shastra that cow dung is pure, then we can see that it's not referencing all the other insignificant material things in this world. So we have to, that's why Jiva Goswami is explaining this one means, this verbal testimony given by the great sages. This is what we're dependent on. This is how we can actually rekindle, reestablish our dormant love for Krishna. From the Tattva Sandarbha. Thus, because the personality of Godhead gives spiritual instructions for everyone's benefit, because he can relieve everyone's unhappiness, because as the sun is to its rays, he is the supreme self of all the jivas, and because he possesses all super excellent qualities, he is supremely deserving of love. By this understanding, one can also ascertain the final goal, prayojana. This is how we can get that final goal. Actually understanding who Krishna is, that Krishna gives everything, and that we're totally dependent on Krishna, just like one sun ray comes from the sun. You can't separate it and take it away and have a ray there and the sun somewhere else. We're always connected. We're eternally. Jivera Swarupa Hoya. What's that verse? Krishnera Nityadas. Nitya, eternal. So the commentary here, all living persons naturally love themselves. Self-hate and indifference to one's own welfare are unnatural. Enlightened self-interest as an impetus for spiritual development is healthy and necessary. But when one has advanced in understanding the true basis of self-satisfaction, one will discover that the Supreme Person deserves one's love the most. God and the jivas are separate beings, just as a flame is not identical with a spark, but is their super self, their source of existence. The Supreme Lord is the super self of all jivas. So we are eternally connected with Krishna. When we turn and try to awaken our Krishna consciousness, Krishna will help us to reestablish that connection. We can never be totally separate from Krishna. No one can be totally independent from Krishna. Of course, the reason we're here is just the opposite. We tried to be totally separate from Krishna. And how does that work? Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadi. Birth, death, old age, and disease. Repeatedly. Not just once. Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadi. Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadi. Repeatedly taking birth. So this is how we can stop that repetition. By once again trying to rekindle our relationship with Krishna. Any questions? If not, one question.
It appeared that Jiva Goswami mentioned that the verbal testimony or the hearing is like faultless. There's no
The hearing is
faultless. There's no fault in
no fault in hearing.
yeah, in hearing, right? I mean that's how I understood it. But then we have experienced that when the information is passed, even by hearing, it loses sometime, and then that's how sometime we become in the state of adharma, and Krishna has to come to re-establish it. Right? So how do I understand that?
That you're saying sometimes when you hear about Krishna, it's not clear or it's not.
It's not clear, or sometimes we lose the information. Like when the information passed down, we hear it, but
it's
we
not.
lose
It's
the
not
information.
clear or it's not
Yeah.
pure.
Right.
That happens in the material world. That it depends. One part of it depends on if what we're really hungry for. You have to be hungry for it. But if you hear something that has been distorted, and you can read things that have been distorted, and you can get information that is distorted from the Puranas. This goes deeper into what I've been studying at home and on my own, but the reason behind that is because Krishna gives everything. When he manifests in this world, the Vedic knowledge, the Puranas, the four Vedas, the Puranas through Veda Vyasadeva, etc. When he manifests that, he also gives the ability for someone to play with it, to change it. Otherwise, it couldn't happen. So Krishna himself assists if you want to get partial information, distorted information. So that individually, it would depend on each one's individual karmic position. But that's how we get it. Where even you can hear from a quote sage, a very learned person that's reading Bhagavad Gita in a very impersonal way. And so his understanding is that the Supreme is just a divine effulgence. You can get that from a very learned person who would teach you ways of understanding like he or she is doing. But that's because the information has been distorted. So we can see one thing here, very fortunate, that anyone in this room, anyone that's come in contact with Prabhupada, basically has been freed from that. Because he's not going to give us that distorted view. When he first came to the U.S., he was teaching the class at 22nd 2nd Avenue. And a lady asked him, because he's reading Bhagavad Gita, asked him which translation should she read, should they get? And Srila Prabhupada couldn't find one. So immediately he set out to translate it himself. There were, at that time, this is 1969, there were over 300 translations of Bhagavad Gita. But they're not coming in Guru Parampara necessarily. Some of them might have close information, but not the information. So we can get it, but again, that's only through Krishna's allowing it to happen. And why does he allow it? Because in this universe or any universes, certain jivas want that. That's what they're after. Some jivas want to just profess that they're religious. So we have many religions. You can be just in the so-called Christian religion. You can be Christian You can be Baptist, Protestant, Methodist, Catholic. Supposed to be one, but you can have so many aspects. Because what satisfies you is just getting that enough information to keep everything on the back burner, and you can go on with your sense gratification. But if you want to get to the rock bottom, then Srila Prabhupada himself recommended it. If you want to understand Srimad Bhagavatam, you should read the 6 Sandarbhas. So we're very fortunate that we have such information like that.
Thank you.
Any other question? Sweta Prabhu is coming. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So this was an intended footnote, and obviously I shouldn't have left it out. I was just for the sake of time. I'm going to quickly read this. This chanting of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, is directly enacted from the spiritual platform, surpassing all lower states of consciousness, namely sensual, mental, and intellectual. There is no need of understanding the language of the mantra, nor is there any need of mental speculation, nor any intellectual adjustment for chanting this Maha Mantra. It springs automatically from the spiritual platform, and as such, anyone can take part in this transcendental sound vibration without any previous qualification and dance in ecstasy. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna,